At the same Congress where in 1956 the attacks on Stalin were made, Khrushchevites came up with certain propositions. The two propositions that they came up with, erroneous propositions, which run counter to Marxism, was that because of the increased unity within the Soviet Union, because of the cohesiveness of society in the Soviet Union, because of the situation that had prevailed as a result of the defeat of fascism and the successful building of socialist industry, the Soviet state had ceased to be the dictatorship of the proletariat. It had become a state of the entire Soviet people. And along with that, they put forward the idea that precisely for that reason, the Communist Party of the Soviet Union had ceased to be the Communist Party of the proletariat. It had ceased to be the vanguard of the proletariat. It had become a party of the entire Soviet people. Because there was no really reason for the Communist Party of the Soviet Union just to represent the working class. It represented everybody's interest. Now, anyone who has even a cursory knowledge of Marxism-Leninism would understand that these propositions are entirely wrong. The hallmark of a communist is not the recognition of class struggle. The hallmark of a communist is the recognition of the necessity for the dictatorship of the proletariat to exist. Not dictatorship of any class, but dictatorship of the working class as well. Not for one day, not for 1 year, not for 1 decade, but for a whole historical epoch, separating the higher stage of communism from capitalism. It is needed for that entire period for a number of reasons, because without the dictatorship of the proletariat, it is not possible to prevent the restoration of capitalism at the hands of the classes who have lost their paradise, who do not actually like working, who do not like the common herd giving them orders to work. It is something which is against their grain. Because in our society, the people who really eat well are the ones who don't eat, don't work. And those who do work sometimes don't eat. No, not all the time. We live in an imperialist country because nobody's dying of starvation as far as I know. But all the same, the rewards are disproportionate. To be one of the darlings of fortune, to be one of the robber barons of capitalism, or one of their flunkies who can work up bonuses of $500,000 to 200 million or 500 million in a year, like the chief executive of Lehman Brothers who failed. Now he went, tears of joy rolling down his cheeks, and $500 million, I hope, in a bank that failed. We're not talking of that, but ordinary people are in a completely different situation. So you need the dictatorship of the proletariat to prevent the restoration of capitalism. You need the dictatorship of the proletariat also to build the socialist society and lead it in the direction not back to capitalism, but forward to the higher stage of communism. Without that discipline, it's not possible. But Marxism teaches, and historical experience confirms, it's not possible to maintain the dictatorship of the proletariat without the party of the proletariat leading it. That party is needed to guide this activity of the dictatorship of the proletariat. Dictatorship of the proletariat is not something amorphous. It's not something you can say, well, there on that wall sits the dictatorship of the proletariat. Dictatorship of the proletariat is a whole system of class alliances, whereby the working class exercises the leadership in suppressing counter-revolution and leading working people in the direction of communism by liberating themselves from old prejudices and old habits of work and working in every way. Khrushchev put forward these propositions, and these were, of course, bound to cause problems. The other thing that at the same Congress Khrushchev did was they tried to violate Lenin's teachings on the question of imperialism and war, put forward the proposition that Soviet Union was strong enough, the socialist camp was strong enough, and although there were still right-wing leaders in the United States and some of the imperialist countries, But the leadership basically of these countries was a very sensible leadership. Eisenhower and Kennedy were routinely described as very sensible people who worked for the peace of the world. This is precisely at a time when the Khrushchevites subsequently were to start attacking the Chinese and the Albanians as being warmongers, as mad people who want to cause a nuclear war between the United States and the Soviet Union. So they put forward this idea. And what is more, they distorted completely, and this is something which is disputed in the movement, because some communists in the movement attributed to Stalin. But I think there's a certain amount of disingenuity in doing it. They completely distorted the Leninist line of peaceful coexistence between states with different social systems. Lenin had come up with the idea of peaceful coexistence after the Civil War and the War of Intervention had been defeated. And he said then it was perfectly possible for the Soviet Union and the capitalist countries to have peaceful coexistence in the sense that we won't wage war against them because they're capitalists. This was a tactical line which was designed to protect the interests of the young Soviet Republic. You know, we have no intention of attacking you on the condition that you don't attack us. But it did not in any way prevent the Soviet Union from either supporting the proletarian revolutionary movements in Western Europe or the national liberation movements in the vast continents of Asia, Africa, and Latin America. So that support for the national liberation and proletarian revolutionary movement was not inconsistent with the line of peaceful coexistence in the foreign policy. What Khrushchev did at the 20th Party Congress was to basically say that peaceful coexistence, and he distorted its content, meant everything. Mustn't do anything that will upset imperialism, mustn't do anything that will cause them to start a war which could actually go out of hand and become a nuclear holocaust. Mustn't support the Vietnamese because that could upset the American imperialists. Mustn't support any other liberation movements. And this, in essence, amounted to, and this, the Khrushchevites said, must constitute the general line of the international communist movement. Well, this, in essence, amounted to excluding the general line of the foreign policy of the socialist countries, their mutual cooperation, because if you cooperate with each other too much, it might end up by annoying imperialism. It amounted giving no assistance to the revolutionary struggles of the oppressed peoples and nations, and subordinating all to this policy of so-called peaceful coexistence.